hair looks stunning. You had like a little Leonardo DiCaprio cowlick, like
It did, yeah, like a full, What's Eating Gilbert Grape vibe.
I should rewatch that.
I need to rewatch it too. I wouldn't have seen that movie in years.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm just going to do a test.
I must admit, I'm feeling a bit like Gilbert's mother at the moment.
I felt like Gilbert's mother since July. Someone lift me out of this house. All right, I'm going to just listen back.
For those watching, we are just triple checking our sound because, as some of you may have mentioned or probably complained, we are trying to perfect our sound.
We can save that little clip too. I've felt like Gilbert's mother since July.
Keep your opinions to yourself.
Yeah.
No, so please tell us.
Yeah, please. Okay. Actually, please send us feedback. Don't forget to like and subscribe. All right, I'm going to save that project because I think that's a keeper. That sounds like a T-shirt slogan. I've felt like Gilbert's mother since July.
Okay. For all our fans out there, please start designing T-shirts for us. That could be really funny.
Phone cases, GIFs. I'd like some GIFs, please. Put some memes on the internet so I can use them as reactions. All right, desktop will do. All right, let's do this. A new one.
You tell me when to hit record.
All right, cool. Recording?
Lovely.
Fantastic.
Hi, Kate.
Hi, Dominic. How are you today?
I'm feeling really, really good.
Yes.
We just launched our 2 test-episodes. So I guess if you're listening to this, you would know that by now. But hey, I'll remind you one more time.
Absolutely. How very exciting. It's real. I saw us on the Spotify the other day. It was very, very cool to see.
And the Googles.
Google. I see you. Gabagool. Yes. So very, very exciting. Before I get into this episode, Dom, I just found it really bizarre. So I was watching an episode of Law and Order SVU last night. It was their latest. Yeah, it's one of my faves. And it was one of their latest episodes. And it revolved around this creepy guy mummifying his victims and setting them up like a dinner party.
Okay, told you. I can see into the future. This is meant to be, Kate.
I couldn't believe it. I should have called you immediately, but I think I was just too blown away that it's so creepy. For those of you that aren't aware and you haven't listened to last week's episode, it was about Russian dolls, essentially that topic. It freaked me out. So it was very, very close to what we were talking about.
Anatoly?
It was not Anatoly. It was Trent.
Oh.
Yeah. So
Trent is kind of the Anatoly of America.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah, it definitely is. They're in the same wheelhouse. All right. Now, the other thing, before I get started on my story of ancient Egypt today, is last week we were talking a lot about pronunciation.
Mm-hmm.
So, you enjoy tripping yourself up with Moscow, cemetery, and also all of the Russian names under the sun. Exactly, which I personally think you pronounce absolutely spot on. But I thought that I would give ancient Egypt a crack. I just really want to try and see if we can insult all of the cultures and all of the countries over our series of pods.
Sure. So, well, just a bit of a tip. My researching methodology is just making sure I spend time with as many male linguists from different parts of the world, and they teach me a trick or two, and I pick some stuff up. So
fantastic! I love that. Look, it got me onto talking about pronunciation. Actually, got me onto looking up whether there is a fear or a phobia about pronouncing things incorrectly, and there is. It is a fear of pronunciation or long words And it is, I've practiced it many times this morning, but we'll see how we go.
Here you go.
Hippopotamonstrosis quippedalophobia. Which ironically is one of the longest words in the dictionary, and that is the fear of long words.
So no one who fears this is ever going to say it.
No.
And I'm not going to get offended by the hippo dig at me, by the way. We were just talking about COVID weight, but
Yeah.
that is mad props for you being able to pronounce that. That was epic.
I practiced it over and over again. And it sort of does sound a little bit like supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, which, props to Julie Andrews, one of my faves. So I just went along with that. So yeah, don't say, listeners, that we don't teach you anything on this pod, because we're truly sharing some great facts or, little trivia that you can use at a boring dinner party. So there you go.
We're putting in effort, so you should too. Please.
That's exactly right. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. So a couple other fun facts, speaking of fun facts, before I get on to the crux of my story, is that we're talking about ancient Egypt. There is a lot to discover, but two things that weren't really kind of fitting into the narrative of my story today, but were equally interesting, so I wanted to share. Ancient Egyptians, they were super keen on hygiene and medical practices. So they had things like, they had an understanding that the pulse was connected to the heart. They shaved their bodies, facial hair, arm hair, like the whole lot, to try to prevent infections and illnesses. And they also did a really good job of preserving bodies naturally with mummification and, all of those techniques that they used. And they were also super into enemas. That was one of their things. Yeah.
That is so on brand with us.
Isn't it?
Anal rectal care is like generational.
It is. That's right. And the oldest written text mentioning enemas is where they administered lots of medications. But there was the medical specialist who was a proctologist, essentially. But in ancient Egyptian, proctologist or their doctor, it translated literally to the shepherd of the anus. So there you go.
Okay. Okay, this is overwhelming me just a little bit. I think I need to put that on a t-shirt.
It sounds like a pretty decent t-shirt slogan. The shepherd of the anus. And then just a pharaoh with his thumbs up, maybe. Feel free to design. That's it. Yeah. So I thought that was interesting. Surprisingly, didn't fit into the rest of my story. So it's a standalone fact. And also the second thing, one of the reasons that I started this episode and wanted to research this is, if you've ever seen the film The Mummy with Brendan Fraser, one thing that will always stick with me are the scarab beetles that come rushing out of one of the tombs and actually crawl into and under the skin of one of the guys in the tomb. I don't think I'll ever forget that image. So naturally, scarab beetles, not a huge fan. But it's depicted in that movie that they attack and devour humans, that they crawl under the skin, and try to eat us from the inside out. Lovely. However, in reality, scarabs would have a really hard time actually penetrating human skin, and they also like eating fruits and insects. They don't like eating flesh because they prefer eating waste. You can take that off your frightened list. I have, because, it was something that I thought I would need to be prepared for again a lot more in my adult life, is scarab beetles. But I feel better having done this research.
That was quite a traumatic scene. But I'm glad, I haven't been to Egypt yet, but that was definitely something that I was considering, some steel-capped toe shoes.
That's it. Those little, what are they? The gaiters? The things that go over your boots. Yeah, sexy. Also, I think the other traumatizing scene was probably the CGI of Dwayne Johnson. But we've come so far since then. So.
I think that haunts his dreams as well.
Yeah, absolutely. But look at him now. He's doing all right.
And we totally love and stand with Brendan Fraser. So glad to see him coming back into the world.
Yes.
Such a horrible story, but we love you, have always loved you. So anyway, shout out to Brendan Fraser if you're listening.
Yeah, 100%. All right, so those are my 2 facts that I just wanted to share that didn't, as I said, didn't tie in with my story. So now I'll get into what I'm going to share with you, Dom, and with our listeners.
So
all right,
excited.
So yeah, it's going to be fun. So, firstly, just a sort of, as a rough kind of description, a lot of bad shit happened in ancient Egypt, is what I've discovered. There's a whole bunch of people that I could have spoken about, but I've just chosen two people. We're talking thousands and thousands of years BC, so obviously a lot of history there. A lot of pharaohs, a lot of famous faces, so to speak. The first one, though, that I want to start with and bring on the pronunciation, the hippopotamusophobia.
Can I guess? Was it Mariah Carey and Whitney Houston?
It wasn't. Surprisingly, it should have been, though. I think we'll try and do a pod on those another time because they're just that's a whole other story. All right, so Akhenaten, Pharaoh Akhenaten.
Okay.
I hadn't heard of him before I did my research on this, but I'll share a little bit about him for you. Akhenaten was a pharaoh of Egypt, and he reigned over the country for 17 years between about 1353 BC and 1335. So that's 17 years, and back in that day, that's a pretty good reign for the time. There was also, Ramses II, he did rule for 67 years, which was pretty impressive, but he also fathered 96 children. So, yeah, he needed to work. Like that he would have had some bills to pay. So having 96 kids. Anyhow, Akhenaten, either before or shortly after he became pharaoh, he married Nefertiti.
Love her.
Yeah, some may know of these people, so I thought I'll just link that together, but give you a bit of context. Now, Akhenaten was known as a religious reformer. So, as you know, religion, worshipping gods, animals, that they're all a huge part of Egyptian culture. Mm-hmm. But Akhenaten, he actually changed their religion to Aten, which is a sun disk. So that saw the names of Amun, the preeminent Egyptian god, and his consort Mut be erased from monuments, documents, and everything throughout Egypt's empire. So all of the pharaohs and people before who had, worshipped Amun and Mut, that was wiped off the history books by Akhenaten.
Okay, I'm just gonna have to pause there for a second. I mean, go him. He obviously knew what he was on about. He had a mission. But for our British listeners out there, if someone named Mut, oh Lord,
I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, I don't know if I could pray to Mut every day. That would get me.
Look, some people do. That's fine by them. Some people do.
Each to your own. It's not not in my Bible, but holy moly. I'm sorry, Kate. I could not laugh at that.
It could be Mut. I could be getting this wrong, but I'm just going to stick with Mut. We're going with Mut. Strap in for a Mut story, everybody. Yeehaw. Okay. So Akhenaten, he wanted to build a new city to honor his the god Amana. So that's his new god. Again, he's just gotten rid of the entire religion that's been part of their culture for thousands of years. So in order to build this new city, he brought in 20,000 people to the site, and he forced them to work until they pretty much dropped dead. So look, not a great boss. The bones that were found in the cemeteries of that town were suggested that more than 2/3 of the men broke at least one bone while they were working, and the other third literally broke their backs. And if anybody tried to escape, he ordered them to be stabbed to death. So you're essentially going to work till you die, or you'll get stabbed. Those were your two choices. So I, upon reading this bit, not a huge fan of this Arten guy, but different strokes for different folks, it was different times. The people in Mana, they also suffered from nutritional deficiencies, and they had a high juvenile mortality rate, even by the standards of the time. A lot of the kids had stunted growth. Their bones were porous due to nutritional deficiency. And it is believed that the commoners lived on a diet of mostly bread and beer, which was the same for me during uni, I think. Yeah. About 3 or 4 years of uni.
That's not going to keep you lasting long.
No, exactly. Researchers also found that 3/4 of the adults, they had degenerative joint diseases, likely from hauling heavy loads. So they're just carrying bricks and stuff like that all day long. And about 2/3 of the adults, they also had at least one broken bone. Yeah. So that's kind of the working decision. What's the word I'm looking for? Conditions. There you go. Just had a little moment there. That's their working conditions. Not pleasant, not great. Akhenaten's just spent his time as pharaoh changing the entire religion. It was also believed that he changed a lot of the style of artwork in ancient Egypt at the time. So a lot of the traditional paintings were very, the subjects were standing up very straight, very rigid. They were, proportioned in terms of how they would imagine to be, painted or put onto, walls and artifacts and things like that. But Akhenaten actually changed it so that the subjects all had really skinny arms. They had huge heads. They had like big sort of pot bellies. It was a very strange change in that artistic, sort of method that they would use. And they thought that maybe that was because he had a physical deformity, that was a, but there's no, they believe that they dug him up and his body, his mummified body didn't show any sign of deformities. So they don't really know why he's made all of these cuckoo artworks. He's changed all the religion. He's changed the capital city, moved it to a different place. So he's got a bit going on. He tried to make some changes.
Yeah, I wonder if this would totally feed into those conspiracy theorists that are like, that's when aliens arrived and they all had skinny arms and big heads and pot bellies from drinking too much VB. And like, you know what? It's quite possible someone out there has thought that it's such a big shift culturally in their worship. And then also art, like all of this, maybe, I don't know, aliens exist.
Hey, you're not wrong. And I didn't even look down the, the alien kind of timeline of that, but I'm sure that there's a lot of stories around that. But, I like that. Maybe that's the next thing I'll have to look into. All right. So, Akhenaten's done a lot of these changes. He's ruled for 17 years. So whatever happened in the final years of his life, so the religious changes, the new capital, the artwork, everything like that, it won't survive his death. So it's going to be changed. Within a few years of his death, which did happen around 1335, a new king was named, and that was Tutankhamun. So he ascended the throne, and many researchers now believe that Akhenaten was Tutankhamun's father and Nefertiti's son. So Tutankhamun, he was the boy king. So he was 10 years old when he became the pharaoh. He was originally named Tutankhaten because of the sun god Aten, but he changed it to honor Amun. So Amun and Mut, they all came back. And all of that previous religion that was created by his father was completely wiped out. So they moved back to their original capital. They changed all of the religion and, essentially wiped out any kind of history of what Akhenaten had tried to create whilst he was pharaoh.
My goodness, this is such juicy content here. Like, why do we always go to the religious route when it comes to Egypt and, do Moses and like, fine, cool, whatever. But we always go down that Roman history when it comes to movies and books and stuff and talk about all their political ins and outs. Like this is fascinating. I'd be really curious to know why Tutankhamun decided to backpedal on his father's ridiculous ideas and like who influenced him. Did they kill Akhenaten?
Akhenaten,
yeah. That sounds so bogan Aussie.
It really does. Akhenaten.
Akhenaten, do the dishes.
Oh, Akhenaten. Yeah, I did get that vibe as well from it. We just really put the mayonnaise on it. I was telling you earlier, Dom, that my story wasn't necessarily going down quite the scary, plot hole that it could have. So I put a bit of mayo on it.
Yeah.
Put a bit of mayo on Akhenaten. Okay, so where were we? I was talking about Tutankhamun. Another pronunciation thing. I did look pretty much all of the pronunciation, either videos or the phonetic spelling. It is Tutankhamun. However, I watched a National Geographic documentary on Disney, and they would say Tutankhamun, which it just didn't sit with me. It does sound a little bit fancier, but I'm going to stick with Tutankhamun. Please write in and tell me I'm wrong. I love constructive
ignoring your complaints.
Exactly. I love selecting all and deleting. All right, so Tutankhamun, he ruled Egypt as a pharaoh for 10 years. So that's it. So only 10. So he died at 19. So some sources say 19, some say 20. But yeah, look, he started as a pharaoh at 10 years old, and he only ruled for 10 years. So his rule, it was notable for reversing those religious reforms from his dad, Akhenaten. And then his legacy. So Tutankhamun wasn't particularly famous. So all of his successors basically did more, they did bigger things, they did better things, and they ruled for longer. So nobody really cared about him. It's like, you're the young king, you did your stuff, you changed the religion back, but ultimately you only ruled for 10 years. You didn't get a lot done. So he kind of wasn't known in that kind of culture. It wasn't particularly famous. However, in 1922, this changed when British archaeologist Howard Carter chiseled through a doorway and entered the boy pharaoh's tomb. It had remained sealed for more than 3,200 years. And inside the tomb, there was a hoard of artifacts. So there was, a chariot, and there was obviously gold and jewels and food and pets and pretty much everything that you can think inside of this tomb that had been sealed for over 3,000 years. So we're talking 1922. We're all of a sudden now in a modern century where this has changed the tone for Tutankhamun. This is a massive discovery. So it basically helped to create the idea that King Tut is now the most famous pharaoh because of this discovery.
Yeah, I was there. It was quite a day.
I just come from the local cabaret. It was a thrill. But the problem is, when you mess with the tomb, you might get the curse. So
here we go.
Yes. So that's where it comes into what I find probably the most fascinating, and they are the ancient Egyptian curses. Ancient Egyptians, they would put warning signs on their tombs, which would threaten a curse upon those who entered. This was in an attempt to protect their gold, their chariots, the pets, everything else that they popped into those tombs from grave robbers and from people that just, lived in the area. Please don't come in here.
Leave my budgies alone.
Yeah, exactly. So one of the curses, they'd be something along these lines. Cursed be those who disturb the rest of a pharaoh. They who shall break the seal of this tomb shall meet death by a disease that no doctor can diagnose.
See, that's good. Like, that's not like whimsical and, oh yeah, that's bullshit. That's like, okay, This could happen. COVID, hello.
Exactly. That's right. It made me think too, because I just picture it as like, you know, the signs that you see in workplaces, like don't put your coffee cup in the sink or shut the door when you go to the toilet. Are they going to have the same thing where it's like done in like word art with like some little like Egyptian mummies around in a border,
Yeah.
printed and laminated with clip art?
Oh my goodness, that would look so cool. Again, a t-shirt. I'd love to see what that curse. Someone design us a curse, please.
Yeah,
That would be
please.
cool.
I mean, there's plenty out there. There are plenty. I've came across a lot, but they just really articulate, and they just, they.
Oh, I know. There would have been a QR code on the fucking tomb. Please check in.
Check in here so that we know if you get cursed, we can contact Trace. Oh my gosh, that's the next step. Contact tracing for curses. Oh, okay. So this is on on some of the tombs, and whilst 1922, this tomb of King Tut's been discovered, so all of a sudden the world is fascinated. They took pictures of what was inside the tomb, so everybody just lost their minds. This is one of the most incredible discoveries in the modern century. So everybody started to become a little bit obsessed with what was inside this tomb. What is this stuff? Who is King Tut? Speaking of curses, on King Tut's tomb, his inscription was, "Death shall come on swift wings to him who disturbs the peace of the king." I'm not going in. Are you going in?
Well, it said him, so Kate, you're free. This is so true. This is one of those times when sexism probably works in your favor.
Yay! All right, I'll go in and I'll grab the chariot. We can use it for weddings and stuff, hire it out.
Chuck a few doughies.
Yeah, absolutely. Now this
slang for you.
we're really thick on the Aussie slang this episode. So if you have no idea what we're talking about, please write in so we can ignore you too. Speaking of ignoring things, wow, that was just an accidental little segue. Thank you. This curse was ignored by Egyptologist Lord Carnarvon and discoverer Howard Carter when they decided to open the tomb in 1922. Okay, so we've found all of these, treasures, all of this stuff. All of these treasures, they made headlines. But then the sensationalistic accounts of subsequent death of the expedition sponsor, Lord Carnarvon, also started to create headlines. People started to get really interested in what was going on. So Lord Carnarvon, he was the financial backer of the team. He died 4 months after opening the tomb. What's most interesting is that he died of a mosquito bite on his cheek. And allegedly, when he died, all of the lights in his house went out.
Ooh, okay.
It is also alleged, with zero facts or credibility to this whatsoever, that Tutankhamun also had a cut on his face in the same place.
Oh, okay. There we go.
But they didn't do, an autopsy, so that can't be confirmed. But I'm going to believe it because it sounds cool. In reality, Carnarvon died of blood poisoning, so he did get a mosquito bite on his face. But then when he was shaving, he actually cut it open, and he was in Egypt at the time. Sort of in terms of hygiene during that time, and it was a bit trickier. So he died of blood poisoning. I'm going to assume, though, that he died of a curse. That's pretty crazy.
Well, Lord Carnarvon, I guess he should be proud of the fact that his namesake would live on and there'd be a town named after him in Australia and would end up finding Cleo Smith there. So,
oh my God.
Look, bad for him, great for Cleo. So, okay.
I completely agree.
That's the first step. That is a bit I have to say that is a bit creepy. The lights, the cut, the same cut as King Tutu.
Yeah, that's it. And this was just the beginning. So there are some other deaths that are associated with the team that were either a part of breaking into the tomb or entering the tomb, or subsequently interacted with King Tut's remains. So I'm going to share some of those with you now. You can believe, you can choose not to believe. I choose to believe because it's creepy as hell. And I kind of enjoy it. I like this little supernatural creepy stuff. The next one I really enjoy. Sir Bruce Ingham. Welcome to the party, Bruce. Please join. Take a seat. He was a friend of Howard Carter. So Howard Carter was the one that entered King Tut's tomb. So Bruce received some gifts from Howard. But this one was particularly creepy. He sent in a box, it was a severed, mummified hand, and it was wearing a bracelet that said, "Cursed be he who moves my body." So why you would move it, I don't know. But this is a creepy ass cursed hand inside a box wearing a bracelet that says, "Please don't move me." But Howard sent it to his friend Bruce. A few days after Bruce received this gift, his house burnt to the ground.
Oh, girl.
Then, not only does his house burn to the ground, but he starts rebuilding it, and then there's a flood. Knocks it down for the second time.
What's he living in Melbourne?
Yeah, he must be the past couple of days. So that's messed up. His house burns down and then there's a flood. What are the in the story of Egypt, the curses, the locusts and the flood and the fires and that's a couple of them.
And the blood,
yeah. We've had the mosquito bite. So I'm going to go like on the locust bandwagon there. We've had the blood, like he had blood poisoning. Now we've got the fire. Now we've got the flood. I don't know about you. I'm no maths teacher, but it's adding up.
We are racking up quite a convincing case here.
Thank you. All right. The next victim, Sir Archibald Douglas Reed. He was not one of the excavators, but he was a radiologist and he x-rayed King Tut's body before it was given to the museum. He got really sick the next day. So he x-rays King Tut. The next day, he gets really ill. 3 days later, dead.
Carked it.
Gone. X-ray man, dead.
I mean, it's pretty invasive.
True. Yeah. So he's gone. The next, we have Hugh Evelyn White. Now, Evelyn White is a British archaeologist. He visited King Tut's tomb and may have helped to, excavate the site.
Mm-hmm.
After seeing death sweep over about 24 of his fellow excavators in 1924, Evelyn White died by suicide, but not before writing, allegedly in his own blood, "I have succumbed to a curse which forces me to disappear."
Oh, that's creepy as fuck.
Yeah, so he's decided that he's seen all of these people dying who had something to do with, Tutankhamun. So he thought, well, I'm just gonna finish it before something takes me. So that was his choice. So that's Hugh Evelyn White.
Gone. We're up to like 4 or 5 people now.
Yeah. And this is just a selection. Like there's allegedly, anywhere between 12 and 20 that could be associated with it. But these were some of the ones that I just sort of enjoyed the most, that I felt were the most compelling. All right. Next victim. It's Aaron Ember. Everyone welcome Aaron Ember to the party. Hi, Aaron. How you going? American Egyptologist Aaron Ember. He was friends with a lot of the people that opened up the tomb. So whilst, not directly involved, he was friends with heaps of the people that were there and that did the expedition, including Lord Carnarvon. Ember died in 1926 when his house in Baltimore burned down. Again, fire. What the hell? His house in Baltimore burned down less than an hour after he and his wife had hosted a dinner party with the people that had excavated this site that had something to do with it. So he hosts a dinner party. He could have exited safely, but his wife encouraged him to save a manuscript that he'd been working on while she went and got their son. So sadly, they and the family's maid died in the catastrophe. So they've tried to go and save, they've tried to go and save the son. The maid's there. The wife has asked Aaron to go and grab the manuscript that he'd been working on. They'd spent weeks and weeks and weeks, months working on this manuscript. The title of the manuscript that he was working on, The Egyptian Book of the Dead.
Don't you even come round here.
The Egyptian Book of the Dead. And his house burns to the ground. Everybody dies. Like, please.
Leave that shit. Leave that shit to burn. Like, I was half expecting it would be like a new will or something and she was going to get everything. So she's like, honey, can you please make sure you bring that?
Please get the life insurance policy. Sign it on your way out. I'll get the boy. No. The Egyptian Book of the Dead. So, we're starting to really rack up some of these deaths, which are a bit cuckoo. Before I get to the last one, which was one of my favorites, it's the least in terms of fact, but we're going to bypass that because we love a bit of mayo. We love a bit of fiction.
Look, we're going down this rabbit hole. If you're going to talk about curses and things like that, despite what you may or may not believe, I think we got to do the full hog here and see, what's what.
I agree. So just to sort of, let's circle back. Howard Carter, I didn't include him. You might be thinking, what about Howard Carter? He's the one that went in there. He moved all the stuff. He did all the things. He died of old age. So, he died of like lymphoma when he was a lot older. So that goes against everything that I've been looking up. But, if you say like, oh my gosh, Howard Carter, he was, it was a bit later on, but he died of old age. We'll associate that to our curses.
Well, Tutankhamun didn't, so maybe Tutankhamun took over Howard's body and was living as Howard.
Oh my God! There you go. I think that's really what it is. Perfect. So thanks for staying with me on that one. That's why I didn't include him, but I didn't want you to think that I'd just, poo-pooed Howard. But the other ones, mosquitoes, fire, flood, that's a lot. This one is my final one, but it is my most favorite one. And I really want it to be true. Okay. So let's just go with it. A lot of people do claim it not to be true. But there were sounds heard coming from a mummy's wooden coffin one night at one of the British museums. So after they excavate all of these, sarcophaguses and these coffins and things like that, they do send them to museums. So the British Museum has acquired a few of these. And it's, alleged that one night there was some sounds coming from them. Then all of a sudden, one of the guards that was, at the museum and looking after these exhibits died mysteriously at the museum.
Ooh.
They don't know how, they don't know why, but they started to get a little creeped out by this. So they thought, well, we'll ship the coffins off. Let's send them to the States and let's just, get them out of here.
Let the Yankees deal with it.
It could be America's problem. So they pop a couple of these coffins from the British Museum onto a ship to send them over to America. The name of that ship was the RMS Titanic.
Oh, holy shit balls.
So whilst that might not be, attributed to fact, I sure as shit believe that because we all know what happened to the Titanic and that's some cursed shit.
Yeah, poor iceberg was doing nothing and some ship decides to have a crack.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, Kate, I was so not expecting it to go anywhere near the vicinity of something like that. That's kind of, now that you mention it, I have a bit of because you may or may not know, I was once a Titanic
A Titanic fan? Were you a fan of the?
Obsessed.
Okay. So when you say, like, just share with our listeners, because I do have a little bit of an idea, having visited your bedroom as young cousins.
Mm.
Can you just share just a little snippet, not the whole lot, and we don't want to scare people, but just even just a little bit of what?
Yeah, well, here we go. Vulnerability moment. Come over to Dominic's vulnerability corner, where I share some of the most embarrassing parts of my life. Feel free to do it as well. Yeah, I had the posters, I had the 3D models, I had the books, I had the movies. Yeah, I just had everything. And but I kind of I remember there being a little link or a story about I think it was that kind of, oh, don't know if it's true or not, but I do recall something about there being Egyptian mummies on Titanic. So
Excellent.
it's a big follow through.
I like it.
It's a curse. Like, if you're going to do it, do it at a bang.
On the Shitting Bricks podcast, we welcome follow through, so that's completely fine. So that was my favorite curse toward the end. Now, I actually, now looking at what I've written here, I don't remember how this quote fits in. So you might need to help me. But as I was going, it fit really well. Perhaps I've edited my text, so now I don't know how it fits in. But we all know what happened to the Titanic. And as President George W. Bush once said, there's an old saying in Tennessee, and I know it's in Texas, it's probably in Tennessee, that says, fool me once, shame on you, fool me, and you can't get fooled again. And I have no clue how that fit in, but I just wanted to share it. Please feel free. Please feel free to write in and tell me where my brain was when that happened. It must have had something to do with the story not being true, with the coffin being on the Titanic. Is that the link? No, please help me.
I think it's hey, here's a warning. Don't disrupt these burial grounds, these sites, these, places of borderline worship or whatever. There's a big old warning on the front door. Fool you once, you come in, you do it again, because I'm sure we've knocked down a few walls since then
absolutely,
and gone through some curses, and we're still not learning our lesson. And I mean, maybe that's the link, or yeah.
Who really knows? But thank you so much for staying with me whilst I went through my my brain fade, my brain fart. Who knows? But you're so welcome, listeners, for letting me, for sharing that quote with you that had zero meaning. It just happened to be at the end of the document I wrote. I think though the biggest thing, I was watching, as I mentioned earlier in the pod, I was watching a documentary on National Geographic, and one of the things that that breaks my heart is what those tombs and what the Valley of the Kings and everything, what that looks like now. It is just, it's tourism, and I understand our global economy needs tourism to work, but it's really devastating to see something that is thousands and thousands and thousands of years old to be so just commercialized and so so disturbed. And it's, it was nice to go on this little journey to go back in time and just to think in my mind what some of that might have looked like and what that would be. I ain't going to go open no tombs anytime soon. I don't know about you. But thank you, Dom, for joining me on my cursed journey through ancient Egypt.
I loved it. I think it's wonderful. It's a great topic. I think it can be incredibly scary. I think, on that serious note, I know they're about to open that huge, amazing new museum in Egypt, which is really, really awesome and cool. And I think what's even better is that they are finally or partially reclaiming a lot of these things that I think are culturally significant to the country, that they should be returned to where they are from. They shouldn't be in some museum elsewhere. But I think this is such a great topic, and it's totally scary. I wish that we lived in a world where this stuff was real and I could believe it. But as a kid, for sure.
Oh yeah,
for
sure.
It's otherworldly a time like that, and if you believe in other things like witchcraft and so on, why can't you believe in this sort of stuff? So
absolutely,
I thought it was a ripper one. It was so different from what we normally do. I love it when you take us on these weird ass journeys from space to Egypt. You have covered all of time almost, and we're only up to episode 4.
we're trying to work our way up from the creation of the planet to modern day times.
But that's the point. Like what we find scary is always so different and unique to each person, which is why when we started this podcast, we did not want to just do the same old generic stories that everyone's done to death and has probably done it better than we have anyway.
No way. I think we're killing it. We're doing it. We're doing just fine. But yes, I look forward to next week's episode. Dom, tell me, can you give us a little hint, maybe what you're going to chat about next week?
Absolutely. So I wasn't sure last week, but this week I'm pretty set, and I don't know how much of a link there is to this, but I've decided to.
It's going to be tough because I didn't really have any links through my entire story. So if you can try and find a link, does it link it all to a random George Bush quote that I don't know how I put it in there?
I have just discovered the link.
Hit me.
The link is the power of suggestion. Okay, so bear with me. This next week's story is going to be about how susceptible we are to being influenced by powers of authority and the monstrous things that can be done without full knowledge of the full situation. And it's a scary story to me because, again, I like those innocuous everyday kind of circumstances. And it's going to take place at a McDonald's.
Oh my gosh!
I'll leave you with that.
I cannot wait. I am so excited. I'm getting like work vibes in terms of influence of people around you. There's certainly cohorts of students that I've seen who, they get influenced by some weird shit. But this is going to be exciting. I cannot wait. Thank you so much for joining me today, Dominic, and to our listeners as well. Please, don't forget to like and subscribe to our social medias. And if you do have any complaints, feel free to send them through. We will not read them. And if you've got any, gratitude, please send that. We will maybe have a look and post it. I'd love it.
And if you're a graphic designer or artistic, there was a few call outs for some merch in there. We'd love to see some t-shirts from this.
There better be some Shepherd of the Anus gear out there by next week, I tell you what. Hit us up with your designs. I love you too, Dom, and I will see you next week. Cannot wait to speak to you then.
Well done. Woo!
Bye.
Let me stop recording this because I need to pee. I'm laughing so hard.